Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Virginia, and today I have some brand new patriotic red, white, and blue decor DIYs to share with you. These are going to be perfect for the upcoming 4th of July holiday, but I also just like having patriotic DIYs up all summer long. I think it is the perfect decor piece in those hot summer months. Starting up, we're going to start with the outside of our home. We're going to be making a new door sign. This is a 14-inch wood round. I picked them up from Amazon. They came in a pack. I know you can also pick them up at Hobby Lobby and Walmart, pretty much any craft store. I started off by just painting everything with a white base. This is from a paint sample that I had. And then if you've been following me for a while, you know I'm not really a fan of measuring things out. I usually just kind of eyeball it. But for this one, I did bring out the tape measure just because I wanted that center red stripe to be pretty center, and then the other ones I did kind of just eyeball. I decided to use vinyl. I was actually running out of my red, white, and blue paint for these DIYs, but I have an overabundance of leftover vinyl. So you can even purchase this at the Dollar Tree and cut it out yourself. I didn't use a cutting machine or anything. I'm just laying them down how I have cut them out. And then I'm also going in with some blue stripes. So I'm laying down the blue stripes right over top of the red ones. Again, you could always just paint this. I was just running low on paint, and this was a little bit faster because I didn't have to wait for anything to dry. I did use my cutting machine to cut out some stars using white vinyl, but you can always use a hole punch for this, or even just print some out onto paper and either hot glue them down or just regular glue them down. The saying that I decided to put on the center of the sign is stars and stripes, and then I did add some red and blue fireworks around them. You could just put on a welcome sign, really whatever you want your sign to say. Then the Dollar Tree had these patriotic bows. They came two in a pack, so I just cut the tails a little bit so you'd still be able to read stars and stripes on the welcome sign. And then before I hot glued that down, I moved on to my hanger. So I wanted a bead hanger, and the Dollar Tree was selling this really long, I think it's supposed to be a book tassel or just a decor tassel, and I decided to turn that into the hanger, so I rethreaded all of the beads onto my own jute to make the hanger, and then I did go in with some hot glue to secure the bow down onto our welcome sign, and this is on my front door now, and I love the way it turned out. This next DIY, we have some pool noodle popsicle bomb pops. I absolutely love this DIY. I saw it on Instagram and thought it was so cute. You're gonna need red, white, and blue pool noodles, but of course I couldn't find those at my Dollar Tree. So I ended up just cutting out about an inch, inch and a half thick pool noodle. You can really do however thick that you want it. I was only able to find a blue one. So I cut out a bunch of the blue, and then I did have an orange one that I had used for Halloween. And I figured the orange would be a little bit easier to paint over since it was a tiny bit lighter than the blue. So then I cut out a bunch of the orange ones, and I decided to go in the backyard, grab a can of spray paint, and paint the orange ones, well, spray paint them red and white. I didn't feel like driving around to a bunch of different Dollar Trees. You definitely could. I know that they're out, but when I was doing this DIY, it was still the end of April, so none of the patriotic kind of Memorial Day themed DIY supplies were out yet, so that's why I had to go in with some spray paint. So once those were all dry, I assembled them like you would a bomb pop popsicle. I absolutely loved these growing up. Let me know if you liked them. Thought they were so delicious. Then I grabbed a large popsicle stick and I am hot gluing it inside of our bomb pop. Also wanted to add a little something extra, so I had some black and white gingham ribbon. I made some bows. Didn't love the way that it looked. I wanted a little something above the bow, so I wrapped the top of the popsicle stick in some jute, and then I made the bow and hot glued it down. The red and blue garland I picked up at the Target dollar spot section last year, so I just added the bomb pops onto that. Next up, if you're looking for a little bit more of a subtle nod to the patriotic decor, these candle DIYs are going to be great for you. So the first one, I picked up one of these white LED candles from the Dollar Tree and also some red glitter cardstock. This one was super easy. I just cut the red glitter into 3 stripes, and then I'm adding a little bit of tape onto the back. I did go back in and actually hot glue these. The paper was not long enough to go all the way around, so I taped this to the back, and then I went in with the extra red glitter and hot glued it over the tape so that it was an actual stripe that went all the way around because the cardstock was not long enough. But this is a super subtle way. I paired it with a red candle, and we have our baseball too, so it kind of adds to the patriotic decor. If you want a little bit more than that last DIY, this is another super easy one, but fun. So I took that same red LED candle and we're just gonna add a little bit more to it. So I added some painter's tape and some paint, painted it in stripes with the red, white, and blue. But once everything was dried, I couldn't stop seeing in my mind the French flag. So I ended up adding some white stars onto the blue section. And then it was, without a doubt, the American flag and not the French flag. For the taller candles, this is a super simple DIY. You can do it with so many different seasons. I think I've added ghosts for Halloween, or maybe I'd added bats. You can add Christmas trees if you want for the Christmas season. Adding stars onto the red ones are just a really easy way to celebrate those patriotic summer months. I put these into some Dollar Tree glass candle holders, and then I had also picked up these glitter star picks, and they had some really nice red, white, and blue bows on them. So I just pulled those off of the star picks and hot glued them onto the front of our candles. So now you have 4 different types of patriotic candles to choose from. This next one, if you have been in a Marshalls or a Home Goods lately, you might have noticed the glass cups that have the indented drawings and symbols on them. I'll insert a picture if you guys don't know what I'm talking about. I did something like this a few months ago for a different holiday and wanted to replicate it for 4th of July. So I am using some markers that I got off Amazon. These draw really nicely on glass, and on my Dollar Tree wine cup and then my other glass cup, one I'm just putting stars all over, and then the wine glass I am adding some American flags all over them. So I just went in with the red, white, and blue markers. I'll have these linked down below. The nice thing about these markers is they did hold up when you hand wash them, but after about 2 washes in the dishwasher, the glasses will be clean, which is kind of nice because that means you can repaint them, redraw on them for the different seasons. Next is not so much DIY, but a find that I saw at the Dollar Tree. I don't remember these in years past, so I do think they might be new this year. And they are drink pouches. So you'll see these on Amazon for a lot more than $1.25. You got 8 in a pack and all of these red, white, and blue straws, which I thought was a really great deal. If you're not familiar with these, if you are going to maybe a field to watch the fireworks or a 4th of July parade this summer and don't want to bring a water bottle, you can fill these up with whatever liquid you want, some juice for the kids, either an adult beverage for you or some water like I did. Then you thread the straw through the bottom 2 holes, and then the top 2 are for your fingers so you can carry them and walk around with them. And then when you're ready to actually drink from them, you open them up and pop in the straw. My dog was very intrigued. He was curious to know what was going on in these drink pouches. I think he was looking for treats and not actually water, but thought this was a really cool find from the Dollar Tree, and you should definitely pick it up if you see it in your store. Next, I am actually moving soon, so for the next probably month or so, you will not see a video from me, but in the process of getting everything moved out and into boxes, we had this spoon, fork, and knife sign hanging in our kitchen, and we had had it for about 5 years, and I was a little bit over the design, so rather than throw it away, I was going to give it away, but I decided to repurpose it because I loved the frame and it was a nice canvas area. I did lay down a layer of white paint just to cover up the image below, and then the top section I covered in some blue paint and added some white vinyl stars. Next, for the stripes, instead of dealing with paint, I decided to go in with some red vinyl to create the stripes. I was using some blue painter's tape just as a spacer to make sure everything was nice and even. So I added in all of my stripes, and then it was super easy but very time consuming writing out the Star Spangled Banner and then cutting it out on my Cricut cutting machine. But once I had everything all cut out in black and white lettering, I laid that down onto my sign, and I love the way this came out. It did take me a long time because there were a lot of little letters to weed through, but I really loved it. If you don't have a cutting machine, you could always print this out. You don't need a cutting machine to do something like this. But it was fun taking something I was going to give away and turning it into something I loved. Next up, we are making candle firecrackers. So I'm using the two taller red candles from earlier and also a white candle that I had. And I just grabbed a kitchen steak knife to cut my candles into the different sized firecrackers. I also found a blogger who had some really nice free printables in very vintage Americana style. So I printed these out and then used some Mod Podge to adhere them onto our wax candles, definitely giving the vibe of the old school vintage firecracker. For the actual firecracker topper, I have seen people use the toothpicks with the red and blue stuff on top of them. And I did see they were on Amazon, but they were about $4, and I didn't feel like paying that much for something I was just going to use on a DIY. So I ended up using a headband that I found at the Dollar Tree. But before that, on one of them, I did write out "boom" onto some brown paper and wrapped it in some twine at the top before hot gluing that on. Then I moved on to the headband that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. It had the red and the blue and even silver tassels on it. So I just took it apart and then hot glued it down onto a bamboo skewer. Then once they were all on, I stuck the skewer down into the candle and then trimmed up. I'm calling it kind of like our waterfall on top of the candle. I trimmed that up and you had a really nice firecracker image. And then also on the headband, you had this silver star. So I did add that to the taller of the red firecrackers. Next up, I've got my own miniature version of the Liberty Bell. Let me know in the comments down below if you have seen the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia and what you thought. As a kid, I just imagined it would be absolutely massive. So I was surprised to see actually how little it was, but definitely not as little as this DIY. I'm taking one of the clay pots from a Dollar Tree. I painted it entirely with white paint and then went in with my smaller painting brush to add on the red and also the blue stripes. I also went in with some brown paint and a dry brush because I wanted it to have that vintage Americana feel. And for the top of our bell, I added some bells on top. Doesn't really make sense, but I thought it looked cute. I did add a little bit of brown paint to the bells because I wanted it to be distressed and a little bit dirty. Added on some jute, some gingham ribbon, and also a wood star topper. Then the final touch was adding 1776 onto the center of it. My next DIY is what I call a book charm. You might see them at Target or any of your other home decor stores. I believe I've seen them sold as book tassels or just like decor tassels. You can drape them over things. I like to drape them over the books that I have on my mantle, and we're just going to do a little bit of a makeover on this one. As you can see, it's really easy. I had some of this red gingham scrapbooking paper that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. I just traced out the heart shape and then placed that on top. And then I went in with USA lettering, but you could also use some of the wood letters from the Dollar Tree and place this on the center. And then I laid it over my books and I plan to put this on my mantle. The next DIY is going to be reusing some old jeans and also some florals that I picked up from the Dollar Tree. I always love their selection. They usually have the red, white, and blue and also the American flag printed flowers, so definitely check out the floral section of your Dollar Tree right now. This is why it is hard for me to throw out anything because I can almost always find a craft that I want to do with it, even including these old jeans. So I'm cutting them out, just the pocket section, so all of the excess around the jean I am just going to discard. Next, I took a small wood dowel and covered it completely with some jute to keep with that rustic Americana feel. And because I want this to be a hanging piece of decor, I am placing a little bit of hot glue in there and then folding the pocket over on the back that jute covered skewer. And this is going to be how I attach the jute on eventually and how it hangs. Next up, I'm adding some embellishments. I wanted a bandana kind of looking element on the jean pocket, so I just cut a little bit of this gingham ribbon. Then for down in the pocket, I loved the red, white, and blue carnations that I picked up at Dollar Tree. It went perfectly with the theme, so I tucked those down into the jean pocket. I started decorating some more. I just imagined that this was a jean jacket, and instead of adding patches, I'm just adding little bits of patriotic decor onto it. So I went with these wood stars. I got these in a massive bag from Hobby Lobby about 5 years ago, and I have been using them every year and still have not run out. I also made some jean flowers. I have a whole video showing you how to make jean and jute flowers. It's pretty simple and I love the look that it gives. It's just very Americana to me and I thought would be the perfect embellishment on this DIY. The final step here is turning this into a hanger. So on the ends of that jute covered skewer, I just placed a little bit of jute, and that way you can hang it right up. If you are looking for a table centerpiece for this 4th of July, then this next DIY is definitely for you. It is so easy to do, and I love the sparkles from the star table scatter, so I think it makes a great focal point if you are doing a 4th of July party or anything. It's definitely going to add a pop of fun and color. I started off with a large mason jar. I had already used this actually for my bridal shower. I will link that above if you haven't checked out that video. I do a lot of really fun bridal shower DIYs, but I'm going to be repurposing it for this one. So I'm covering it in some brown paint, and then I also went over it once all of the brown paint had dried with a little bit of this light gray color. It's called Mineral by Waverly, and I just went in. I wanted this to look very dirty and distressed. The style is called Primal. If you're on Pinterest or anything and you look up, Primal Americana DIYs, it's kind of like that very dirty, more extreme version of rustic, but I really like it, especially for any type of patriotic Americana style crafts. I think it looks really nice. To go inside of our jar, I'm taking bamboo skewers and this bag of table scatter from the Dollar Tree. I always avoid the table scatter just because I never really use it, but I thought in this instance, it would be perfect. I loved how glittery and bright the stars were, knew that it would look great for a centerpiece, so I popped those onto the bamboo skewers. They're made of foam, so they're really easy to just put the bamboo skewer through, and then started placing them all around the mason jar. I used a little bit of blue tape inside of the mason jar just to make sure the bamboo skewers didn't move around too much, but if you have any floral foam, you could pop that down in the bottom of the mason jar and then it would be a little bit easier. You wouldn't need the tape, you could just put the skewers through that, but I was out of floral foam, so I just went with some good old tape, and then not only to cover up the tape, but also make the jar look a little bit more full, I added a little bit of raffia in there. And to go on the front of our mason jar, I took some burlap ribbon, but you could just use burlap fabric. I frayed the ends, the top and the bottom, and then I just went in with a permanent marker and wrote out USA before hot gluing that onto the front. And that is really it. It's super easy. You could even get the kids involved, give them their own table scatter and have them make their own centerpiece. I love how this one turned out. I haven't done a gnome DIY in quite a while, but I couldn't pass this one up. I saw it on Pinterest and wanted to try to create my own version of it. We have our Uncle Sam gnome, and you really only need a couple of supplies to do it. The first one being a wood pallet from the Dollar Tree. I actually used this, I think about 4 years ago in one of my first ever 4th of July videos where I made an American flag out of the pallet and added some embellishments onto it, but I took that apart and thought this would be perfect for the hat of the Uncle Sam gnome. I also picked up some patriotic scrapbooking paper at Hobby Lobby, and the stars I'm going to be using for the brim of our tall hat. The beard for our Uncle Sam gnome is very simple. I am just cutting out some strips of white fabric, and I'm going to end up knotting them at the top and then hot gluing them onto the back of the hat. But if you don't want to do this, you can always take a mop from the Dollar Tree cleaning supplies section and use that as the beard. You could also use yarn. There's lots of different possibilities here. I've used, I believe, all of those supplies in the past, so I wanted to do something a little bit different. That's why I decided, since I had some scrap fabric laying around, that I would just cut out the strips and then hot glue those to the back of our palette. Since I already had the hot glue out, instead of using Mod Podge or a glue stick, I just used that to attach the brim of the hat to the bottom of the palette. And then it was time to give my gnome a little bit of a haircut. His beard was a little bit too long, so I went back in with my scissors and gave that a trim. For the nose, the easiest thing that I find is just using a wood bead. I have done pantyhose filled with a little bit of some fiberfill in the past. I will have that linked above if you want to check that video out. It was from the Christmas time period, but wood bead is really just the simplest. This one worked perfectly, so I just added a little bit of hot glue right under the brim of his hat. I wanted one more embellishment on the edge of the top hat, so I went with a pretty easy expo. All that you really do, I had different pieces of ribbon and fabric, and you're just gonna start crisscrossing them in different X formations. And for this one, I used hot glue. I'll show you a little later in the video one where I actually attached it all with a zip tie, but hot glue works too. And then for the centerpiece, and to kind of hide where I had all that hot glue, I went with a larger wood star for the center of the bow. And of course, I am very much going with the rustic Americana theme in today's video, so had to give my gnome a little bit of dirt, went in with some brown paint, and just really added a little bit of distressing and dirtied up our gnome. This next DIY is probably the easiest one in the whole video. We are going to be giving a baseball a makeover. Nothing really more American than a baseball, so this one is brand new. I think it would actually be even easier if you used a used baseball because I ended up using a lot of brown paint to dirty it up anyway. And going along this seam, I'm just taking some red paint. This one is Crimson by Waverly, and really simple, just making some stripes with it. You could also use a red Sharpie pen if you didn't want to get out any of your paints. And then for the other section of the baseball, I'm going in with this color. It's Navy by Apple Barrel, and I did 2 coats of that just because I wanted a really dark navy color. And then the last step is adding on our stars. I had some star stickers, so I went in with those. They're white just all over the blue section. And again, I really like the rustic and primal style, so I went in with some brown paint and really made this look very weathered and used. But if you like the fresher look, you don't need to go in with this step. Or better yet, like I said, if you have a used baseball, then you could forego this step entirely. In the sign section of the Dollar Tree, usually with their seasonal decor, they've been coming out with more and more of these wood cutting boards, and I think they are fantastic to DIY with. So I took one of them and flipped it over so we have a blank canvas to work with, and I just began creating my American flag. So I taped it out using some painter's tape. I also got this from Dollar Tree. I find their painter's tape works really well for crafts. Don't know if I'd trust it for actually painting a room, but for crafting, it works out great. I have the one section where I have painted it white, and then I went in with some more tape, and this is of course where we're going to be creating our stripes. The red color that I use is Crimson by Waverly. That is definitely my go-to for any of my 4th of July DIYs. And then once that was dry, always so satisfying to go in and peel off all of the tape. I could have just painted the top navy and went in with some more of those white star stickers, but I wanted to show you all a little bit of a different technique. So I actually painted the top white, and then I had these star stickers from Dollar Tree that are all sorts of different metallic colors. So I laid those down once the white paint was fully dry, and then I went over it with the navy paint. Again, this is just Navy by Apple Barrel. And then I went in with my little Cricut weeding tool, and I'm peeling off the star stickers, and then you can see once I've peeled them off, the white star is left behind. For the bow on this cutting board, I'm going with a pretty simple X bow. I really like these. They're a little bit messy looking, which goes with my kind of rustic Americana theme for all of the new DIYs in today's video. So I am just grabbing a bunch of different ribbons, pinching them in the center, kind of trying to make them an X, and then securing them with a zip tie. But I didn't pull the zip tie completely because once I have it on just enough that the ribbons aren't going to be sliding, that's when I can pull the ribbons, kind of change them how I want, make sure that they're in a good formation, so they're not all clumped on one side. And then I pulled the zip tie extra tight and of course cut off the excess and hot glue that onto the cutting board, with the center being a white wood star. For the smaller section on our cutting board where I'm going to have the burlap and the USA, I did pretty much the same technique that I showed you guys earlier for pulling apart the burlap so it looks a bit more weathered. I also had some wood beads from the Dollar Tree, so I hot glued those right onto the burlap and then used my Sharpie to write out USA. For the final step, I took some thicker jute and just wrapped that a couple of times around the cutting board. I really liked the look that that gave. I love making the faux book stacks using the wood crates from the Dollar Tree. If you haven't seen this technique before, it's really easy. You pick up one of the wood crates from the Crafter Square section of the Dollar Tree, and when you flip it upside down, it looks like you have 3 books stacked on top of one another. So I wanted to make one for 4th of July. I had this wood crate. I think I used it during the Christmas time period, so that's why it's red, but I'm going over it with some white paint before adding my words onto it. I chose Let Freedom Ring. I found this in Design Space, so I just used what they had, and I also added some of these red and blue fireworks to the top of it. Since I had the wording on the right side of the crate, I thought the left side was looking a little bare, so I went in with some linen ribbon and wrapped that around, and I still wanted a little bit more of an embellishment, so I had some black and white gingham ribbon, so I just made a little bow with that and adhered it using one of the glue dots that you can also pick up in the Crafter Square section of Dollar Tree. Next up, we have an Americana hat. I'm calling it the Uncle Sam hat, and we're going to be using some scrap fabric that I have. Instead of throwing it away, I thought that I could make a little something out of it. So for the base of our hat, I have this star fabric. So I just cut out a circle. I actually used that ribbon that you see in the left-hand corner as my guide. And then for the top hat section, I have some red and white striped fabric, and I just used my colored pencil to guesstimate the best I could for how I wanted the top hat portion of it to be. And then I glued down the right sides of the fabric together. Once the glue is completely dry, I will pull that inside out. But then for the base of the hat, I just glued it with the wrong sides of the fabric together. It was just a little bit easier that way. And then I went in with some stuffing. I picked up all of my stuffing from the Crafter Square section. You get a pretty big bag for $1.25, so I thought it was a good deal. And then once I have it filled, I didn't want to fill it too much since it's the base of the hat. I went back in with the hot glue to seal everything together before doing the exact same with the top hat. Of course, you could always sew this, but I wanted to show a no-sew option. I hot glued the top hat portion to the base of our hat and then went around it with some of this burlap looking ribbon. I really wanted to add a buckle to the front of the hat. I tried making one out of a paper clip. I tried using some gold wire, but nothing looked good, so I ended up just calling it quits on that and going in with a wood star. I cut a circle out of some scrapbooking paper that I had and wrote out USA using a Sharpie. I wanted a safety pin to attach this, but unfortunately I didn't have any, which is kind of surprising. So I went in with some gold wire and just threaded that through the top of the hat to kind of do my own DIY safety pin. I love going to my local thrift store. You really never know what you can find, and I ended up picking up this America wood outline. I got it for only $1. When I flipped it, I realized that it was originally $5. It looks like it was found in the Target dollar spot section. I'm not sure if they have them this year, but if they do, even for $5, it's really large and I think a really nice wood piece. But of course, I was very happy that I only got it for $1, but I wanted to give it a little bit of a makeover. So going with that same navy color by Apple Barrel, I did the entire background of the America outline. And then for the actual outline, I went in with some red paint. This again is Crimson by Waverly. For the saying that's going to go in here, land that I love, this was actually from Cricut Design Space. I will leave it linked down below in case you guys also want to use it. I think it looks perfect and really fit the entire America outline. This is a really great one if you maybe don't have a lot of time on your hands, but you want to add a tiny bit of some patriotic decor. This is actually from one of the calendars that the Dollar Tree sells. This was for the month of July, of course. So I just placed the calendar into a white Dollar Tree frame, and then using my X-Acto knife, I'm just cutting out any of that excess bit of the calendar. But you can even find something online. I'll have some of my favorite 4th of July printables down below in the description box. I have a bunch of them, and all you really have to do is pop them in a frame, and it gives this really great touch of red, white, and blue decor. The next DIY is transforming an old lemonade bottle into this piece of patriotic decor. I had this bottle sitting around in my craft stash for quite a few months. It's actually the sparkling pink lemonade from Trader Joe's, and I love the shape of the bottle, so I did keep it after I drank all of the pink lemonade and cleaned it. And I'm starting off by taking some painter's tape and just taping off the areas. I'm going to be doing red at the top and at the bottom. The color red that I'm using is Crimson by Waverly Chalk Paint. I also add in a tiny bit of matte Mod Podge to my paint whenever I'm working on glass. One of you amazing subscribers suggested that to me. It really helps the paint from peeling off of the glass. Normally, when you add Mod Podge or really any glue to a chalk paint, you're going to get that crackle effect, but I find that when I just use the tiniest bit and when it's on the glass surface, that does not happen. So if you're not going for that crackly look, I would not worry, just use a tiny bit, and again, I think it's the surface of the glass, it just doesn't make that crackle. The center portion I painted white using the color White by Waverly Chalk Paint, and then I cut out this large star sticker, and I'm just going to be using this to cover up the white area, so then when I peel it away in just a little bit, we'll have a white star underneath our blue. The blue that I used was English Navy by Apple Barrel, and I had ran out of painter's tape, so I just freehanded this section, and then once it was all dry, I was able to remove that large star sticker. I wanted this DIY to be very rustic Americana, so of course I had to distress everything using my trusty Apple Barrel chip brush and the Burnt Umber color by Apple Barrel. The finishing touch was adding a gingham red bow to the top of my bottle, but again, I wanted it to be distressed, very rustic looking, so I went in with that brown paint on the ribbon as well. The tag I made in my previous video, so I will link that above. The next DIY is perfect if you are making a patriotic tiered tray. I have quite a few in today's video that are smaller DIYs that are perfect if you are trying to do a tiered tray or just decorate a larger area with a bunch of tinier home decor pieces. This easel I found in the Crafter Square section, and I'm kind of being messy using the Burnt Umber shade by Apple Barrel to paint all around our easel because I am going to be going in with this American flag scrapbooking paper, so that's going to cover all of the messiness that might have gotten on the chalkboard section. I picked up this scrapbooking paper from Hobby Lobby. That is by far my favorite place for all of my scrapbooking paper needs. The centerpiece of this DIY is actually something that I created in my first ever patriotic 4th of July video a couple of years ago. I used some old pieces of an Amazon box, so I'm cutting stars out of the cardboard, and then I pulled the cardboard apart so you have that corrugated look. Next, I printed out America the Beautiful, and using a star as a stencil, I first traced out the star onto the paper, and then I cut it out and used a glue stick to adhere the music note paper onto the corrugated cardboard. Using my trusty glue dots from the Dollar Tree, I love using these when maybe I don't want something as permanent as hot glue. Who knows, after 4th of July is over, I might want to reuse this easel for a project in the future. So I really like using those sticky dots. They adhere everything so nothing is falling down, but not so much that if I want to reuse the easel, I can easily take off the star without ruining the project. Let me know in the comments down below what your summer vacation plans are. I'm going to be gone for a good portion of July. I'll try to get out a video every other week, and then, as crazy as it sounds, you guys know the Dollar Tree gets all of their fall decor out mid-August. So yeah, it sounds nuts, but I'm gonna be starting some fall hauls and fall videos in late August. So I'll be a little sporadic with posting for end of June and July, but you can bet that I will be back every week as soon as that fall stuff hits the store in late August. I love the blank signs the Dollar Tree has recently come out with. It's so nice. We no longer have to take apart signs and sand them and repaint them. This is a wood round, of course, that I picked up from the Dollar Tree, and the Happy 4th of July SVG I got from Cricut Design Space. This is such a simple DIY. All I had to do was cut out the vinyl and then use some different Dollar Tree ribbons and a wood star to complete the bow on top. I am bringing it back to the basics with today's video. Between the crate and this wood palette, these are some of the original craft items from the Dollar Tree that you can pretty much always find in the wood craft section of Crafter's Square. I'm going to be making this one to look just like the American flag with red and white stripes. Again, we have Crimson by Waverly and just the color white by Waverly. Those are going to be our stripes. And of course, for the star section, I'm taking the color English Navy. Again, I know it is ironic that for the 4th of July, I'm using a shade called English Navy, but it really is that perfect navy color, so I really like using this one. I did add a little bit of painter's tape. I thought I could freehand it, but I was getting a little messy, so I did go in with the painter's tape just so that I would have a more crisp line. This is some more scrapbooking paper that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. I don't actually know what it says, but it looked very much like the Declaration of Independence, that kind of old school flowy handwriting. So I traced out the wood star shape and then cut that out and adhered it down with a glue stick. I thought that I was going to be done with the DIY here, but I felt like it was missing something, so I went back to my trusty jute. You guys know this is probably my favorite and most used craft supply, and I wrapped that a bunch around the right-hand side of our wood palette flag, and then I wanted a little something more, so I cut out 3 equal pieces of jute and made a triple bow. I know that there's a way to do it so you have the triple bow section and only one tail, but I actually wanted a thicker tail to my bow, so I was okay with having the 3 sections of jute hanging down. And again, in case I want to reuse this wood palette for something else instead of using hot glue, I am just using those sticker dots from the Dollar Tree. They are absolutely perfect if you are a big crafter like me and you want to reuse your supplies for different seasons and different crafts without having to buy a new palette every single time you want to craft. This mini cutting board is another quick and easy DIY that is on the smaller side, so it would be perfect to decorate a tiered tray with. For the base coat of our mini cutting board, I covered it with the shade Mineral by Apple Barrel, which is this nice lighter gray shade, lighter than the shade Elephant by Waverly, which is usually my go-to gray. And no surprise here, I'm distressing it because I want this to look nice and rustic, so I'm using my Apple Barrel chip brush and Apple Barrel brown paint in the shade Burnt Umber. I went back to my American flag scrapbooking paper and I'm covering not quite the entire cutting board area, but a little bit less, so I'm leaving the top section and the handle of the cutting board blank. This glue stick kind of makes me laugh because it's so massive, but I got it 2 in a pack from Jot, which is a Dollar Tree, mostly like school supply and office supply brand. But hey, it works really well, and I got a lot of glue for only $1.25. Going back to that ornament that we used the star from on our wood crate earlier in the video, I am taking the tassel and that's going to be what is hanging down on our cutting board. And to cover up the kind of hook section, I tried to cut it off but couldn't. So just to hide it as well as to hold the tassel in place, I am taking, again, no surprise, some jute and wrapping that around the handle section of the cutting board. And final touch, I also took some jute to add a little bow at the top. Let me know in the comments down below how you have decorated for the 4th of July or what DIYs you have made. I always love hearing from you and the amazing creations that you make. Next up is a patriotic wreath, which is perfect to have up on your door all summer long. I've gotten really into the wreaths in the past 2 years. I used to love making the signs from Dollar Tree, but this year I've gotten more into the wreath, so I thought I would try my hand at one for the 4th of July. I took this wreath form from the Dollar Tree. It's just the simple circle one. And then I took 4 pieces of Dollar Tree ribbon. I have a red gingham, 2 different patriotic star types, and a burlap. One thing that I would mention is to kind of learn from me. It's a lot easier when all of your ribbon is wired. My patriotic ribbon was not wired, but the burlap and gingham were, and it was way easier to work with the wired ribbon. So if you have a choice, I would definitely go for all wired ribbon. So I'm using a lot of zip ties in this wreath. To start off, I just zip tied the ends of our ribbons to the actual wreath form. And then I'm going to be creating pretty much ribbons, little bumps that are going around. Later on, we're gonna pull apart the ribbon, which is why it doesn't matter. They're just all on top of each other right now. So we're basically creating little waves with the ribbon. Now, unfortunately, I used the Dollar Tree ribbon, and this was all the ribbon I had. It was 8 feet. So I had to do my waves a little bit further apart for a more cohesive, and I think it would make a nicer wreath. You're gonna wanna do your little waves, that's what I'm calling them, really close together, kind of like how they are right now. And you'll see, I realize as I'm doing the wreath that I am going to run out of ribbon and I don't have any more. So I start making them more spaced, but I do think you're gonna get a much more beautiful and full wreath the closer together your little waves or bumps are. So just keep that in mind. You're probably gonna need more than just the 8 feet of ribbon. Unfortunately, I was already started on this project, didn't have time to go back out to the Dollar Tree, so I just did mine a little further apart. Once you have zip tied down all of your waves, I think is now the fun part. You get to pull apart all of your ribbon, and this is going to take it from just the one ribbon that you're seeing, the stars. Now you're gonna be able to see the gingham, the burlap, the other set of stars, and you can do this in whatever pattern you would like. I tried to do the red gingham every other, and you're just pulling everything apart and you'll see your wreath start to take shape. Because I realized I was running out of ribbon and had to make it much larger and more spaced out, you can see right now that you are able to see the outer section of the wreath form, which I did not like. So I went in with some nautical rope from the gardening section of the Dollar Tree, and I went around the entire basically outer wreath form, just so that instead of seeing the wire, you would now see the natural nautical rope, and it really matched the burlap and the other star ribbons. So I thought it added a nice touch to this wreath and was a simple way to hide the metal wreath form. The next step is just adding a little bit more embellishment to the wreath. I wanted to create some Liberty Bells, so I took these tiny little clay pots that come 3 for $1.25 in the gardening section of the Dollar Tree and painted them red, white, and blue. I'm gonna have 2, and those will be our hanging Liberty Bells. If you didn't want to use this, you could also just do a nice big bow at the bottom of your wreath and be done with that. The rope that I'm using to hang the bells is called nautical jute rope, and you can find it in the ocean or beach section of your Dollar Tree, or I've also seen it in the section with kind of like the flowers and the mirrors and the different signs. My porch is covered, and that's where my wreath is on the front door, so I don't really have to worry about this getting wet or, any exposure to the elements. But every once in a while, we might have a rainstorm that's particularly windy, so to make sure that my little clay Liberty Bells weren't thrashing in the wind, I did add some Velcro adhesive just to keep them in place on the door, and you can see that way they will not move in any kind of storm. Next up, I'm going to show you how to make these stars and stripe dice using some items from the Crafter Square section of the Dollar Tree. This is a really simple DIY, but I think would look so cute on a tiered tray or even on a mantle in your home. I found this trio of wood dice in the Crafter Square section next to some of their other wood signs, and really simple. I'm going to be painting them red, white, and blue for pretty much every craft in today's video. The white is White by Waverly Chalk Paint, the blue is English Navy by Apple Barrel, and the red is Crimson by Waverly. I made a stencil using some leftover vinyl I had. For the and symbol, I'm using the color Elephant by Waverly to fill that in. And for the stars, I just used the White by Waverly. I did the stripes on the last wood block off camera, and I just freehanded that using my paintbrush. And then once my paint was dry, I removed the stencils from the stars and the and symbol. If you're not able to find this trio of wood blocks at your Crafter Square section of the Dollar Tree, they also have the foam dice in the children's toy section that you could also use. Next up, I'm going to show you how to make this rustic Americana star using some of the wallpaper stick-ons from the home decor section of Dollar Tree. I tried to incorporate a couple different styles in today's video. Some are the fun, bright 4th of July colors that you'll see on a lot of Hobby Lobby decor. I also tried to do some more farmhouse items, but this style, which is the rustic Americana, is definitely my favorite. I found this wood star not in the 4th of July America theme stuff at the Dollar Tree, but actually in the Crafters Square section. I'm sure they'll come out with some more star signs the closer we get to 4th of July, but my stores didn't have any out yet. The Dollar Tree sells wallpaper stick-ons, and I'm using that to cover up our wood star. Right near the points of the star, it didn't quite cover, so I did just cut out a little bit more of the wallpaper from the scraps to make sure that all of the star was covered in the wallpaper. Next, I went in with Crimson by Waverly and covered the star in 2 coats of this red paint. To not only distress the star, but also make those pretty designs from the wallpaper really pop out, I went in with a dry brush and a little bit of white paint and dry brushed the entire star. As you can see, the curls and different designs of the wallpaper really pop when you place that white paint over it. Next, it's time to add in all of the embellishments to our home decor piece. I'm starting off with a tag that I cut out of some scrapbooking paper that I had, and then put Establish 1776 using some black vinyl, but you can always just go in with a marker or a paint pen. I wanted to add in some greenery to our sign, so these are just some greenery sprigs that I have in my scrap floral stash. I hot glued those onto the top of our star before adding in some ribbon. I really like this linen ribbon because it's frayed and gives off that distressed rustic look that I'm going for, and then I added in a little bit more of the greenery on top of that. On top of the greenery and linen ribbon, I added in a longer piece of this red gingham ribbon, and then to cover up where the greenery was and where all of the ribbons met at the top, I took a wood star. I have these in a large bag that I picked up from Hobby Lobby a couple of years ago, and they have lasted me a really long time. I did stain the star using the color Antique by Waverly, and then hot glued that up at the top. I was looking up patriotic home decor on Etsy for some ideas and inspiration, and maybe even if I saw some items that I wanted to purchase myself. And something that kept coming up on my search engine were these patriotic star wands and patriotic star decor. They were pretty pricey on Etsy, so I wanted to see if I could recreate them using Dollar Tree supplies and make something more affordable. The Dollar Tree is selling these I Heart USA Star Foam Wands. You get 4 in a pack for $1.25, but for this DIY, I'm just going to be using 3 of them, and I covered them using some patriotic scrapbooking paper that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. This past week, they were on sale. Anything from Paper Studio was 40% off, and they're already only about 70 cents, so it was an extra good deal. I used the paint color Burnt Umber by Apple Barrel to just distress the scrapbooking paper a little bit to give it that Americana rustic look, and then I adhered it down with hot glue. I tried to use a glue stick at first, but because the wands are foam, it wasn't quite adhering as I liked, so I ended up going in with hot glue. And on 2 of the stars, I also added smaller wood star elements as well as a small floral piece onto the star that I'm working on right now. Next is to add all of the fun ribbons to our wands. This was my favorite part. It's where you get to personalize your wands. I kept the colors pretty neutral and rustic natural, so I'm using a bit of burlap, some jute, and again, that red gingham ribbon that I really like. Also, when I cut the burlap to make it into a thinner piece of ribbon, I had the wired edges, so I spun that around a paintbrush to kind of create that curly cue, and I placed that in the center of some of the ribbons. To really emphasize the rustic look on 2 of the stars, I took some red push pins and painted them a dark brown. A little bit of the red still shone through, which I thought matched the ribbon, so I was okay with that, and I placed those on the points of our stars. This sign is inspired by one I found at Hobby Lobby, but thought that I could recreate for a fraction of the cost. You'll have to let me know in the comments down below what sign or what wreath I should put on my front door for Memorial Day. I'm torn. I have about 3 front door signs in today's video, so you guys will be the deciding factor. Let me know in the comments down below. I found this popsicle sign from the Dollar Tree, which had the perfect size popsicles, but I wasn't too fond of the glitter and the bright colors. So I used my own white, navy, and red paint to redesign the popsicles to my liking. I went into my craft stash and I have quite a few signs. I decided to go with this one from the Christmas time period, and I'm using another one of those wallpaper stick-ons to adhere to the front of the sign. This sign was the perfect height and width to repurpose the Dollar Tree popsicle sign. I even took the welcome that was a part of that original sign and repainted it a dark navy, and also took a paint pen to kind of add some emphasis and embellishments along our sign. But instead of saying welcome, I am actually going to be placing down red, white, and cool. This is what the Hobby Lobby sign had on it, so I wanted to recreate it perfectly. For the cool, I did use some silver glittery vinyl, which is actually from the Dollar Tree. The final step is hot gluing down all of our pieces. That includes the red, white, and cool sign and the trio of popsicles. I left the original hanger on this sign, so I didn't have to add any of that. I think this came out as a really good dupe to the original Hobby Lobby sign, and unlike the cost of that one, this one only cost me $2.50. The next DIY is a really easy one and would also be a great one to do with kids. All that you're really going to need are any of the window clings from the Dollar Tree. They always come out with new ones for different holidays, and for 4th of July, Memorial Day, I've picked up this one. I thought it was really cute. I also saw one with some gnomes on it, but I had an idea for what I wanted to do with the large America the Beautiful one. For the USA one, I just grabbed one of the tall candles from Dollar Tree. These are perfect because the window clings immediately adhere to them. You can give them to the kiddos and give them the window clings and let them create their own design. Same with this picture frame. I went with the America the Beautiful, and because it has the glass on the picture frame, the window clings adhere just like they would on a window. So you could give each of your kids a different picture frame and let them go wild designing their own frame or a candle for the patriotic holidays to come this summer. Next is the third sign out of my 10 new patriotic DIYs for this video. So remember, let me know in the comments down below which one you think should go on my front door, the ribbon wreath, the popsicle sign, or this one. I do have quite a few patriotic holidays that I can leave these up for, so really I guess I can rotate all 3 if I wanted to. For the welcome sign, I took this long wood summer sign that I got last summer from Dollar Tree, and I painted it white and added a little bit of brown distressing. Then I'm going in with this star welcome stencil. This is from Essential Stencils. I really enjoy their stencils. This is the first time that I have used them. The other one that I used is like a rub-on transfer that I really loved by them. I used it in my Easter DIY, and I am just patting down the paint. I am using again English Navy, Crimson by Waverly, and then the white was just a white by Waverly. I do think that I probably should have gone in with a little bit of Mod Podge before I laid the paint down. There were a couple areas that it bled through a little bit. You really can't tell on camera. I'm being a little bit picky, but when I saw it in person, I really think laying down a little bit of Mod Podge just helps everything not bleed through. Then I took some s'more sticks and I painted them brown. The color is Burnt Umber by Apple Barrel, and I placed those along the sides of the welcome sign to give them a nice brown wood border. And lastly, to complete this sign, I did go in with a bow. It used a little bit of raffia and burlap. Also, if you like the pinwheel that is in the staging for this sign, keep watching because I have a tutorial on how to do it a little bit later in the video. This was another Hobby Lobby dupe. I will insert what I saw at Hobby Lobby, and I already had a bunch of these rolling pins. I've picked them up. They came, I believe, in a pack of 3, and I just reused them for a lot of the different seasons. This is what it looks like plain. Then I painted the actual rolling part white and the handles a brown. Next, I am taping off the area so that I can paint the spot where the stars are going to go blue. Again, it's English Navy by Apple Barrel. So I wanted to show you that you can use vinyl, especially from the Dollar Tree, even if you don't have a Cricut machine. This is a star hole punch that I have, and I just took the white vinyl from Dollar Tree and I'm hole punching different little stars. So now I have star stickers, and you didn't need a cutting machine for that. Same with this red vinyl. This is also from Dollar Tree, and I just cut it into strips. This is, of course, going to be the stripes on our sign. So again, another way that you can use Dollar Tree vinyl without a Cricut or another type of cutting machine. Because we hole punched out our stars earlier, we are now able to use them just as stickers. So I'm decorating that all around the blue part of our rolling pin. I also wanted to add a little bow, so I chose to do jute with a button in the center to again make that rustic Americana look, and I just adhered that using one of the glue dots from the Dollar Tree right near the blue section with our stars. This DIY is a great one if you maybe don't want to tackle on a massive DIY project, but you still want to have a little bit of the Americana patriotic home decor in your home. Check out these star ornaments from the Dollar Tree. They are called ornaments, but I'm going to be turning them into garland. All that I need to do is add a tassel. How I make my tassels, I just do them really quick and easy. I grab an index card and I'm wrapping jute all around it. It just depends on how fluffy or how full you want your tassel to be. Once you're happy with the thickness of that, you can slide it off of your index card. Then I cut the bottom, so instead of a giant loop, we now have all these strings at the bottom. Before I tie it off, I wanted to add red, white, and blue ribbon. The blue is actually from those foam wands from earlier, and then I added in the gingham and the lace. I slipped that onto the end section of what is going to be our garland and just tied that off. They already give you a good amount of jute down at the bottom, so I didn't have to add any more. I cut off another piece of jute and used that to tie off the top part of our tassel. I did a double knot and then just let the jute hang down because now it's time to trim our tassel. Depends on how long you want yours to be. I wanted mine a little bit shorter, so I'm giving it a pretty good haircut. And after you have finished cutting off the end parts of your tassel, you can kind of fluff it around and make sure that the ribbons are poking through and that everything is to your length liking. I am so obsessed with these patriotic pinwheels. I think they came out so cute, and the best part is there is no sewing involved. When I originally saw a picture of these, I was like, they're cute, but I'm gonna have to sew, which I can do, but you know, then you gotta get out the sewing machine, and that's a whole bunch of work I didn't want to get into. So these are gonna be some easy no sew, and we're gonna be making 2 of them. So I have my 2 different types of fabric, and I cut out 4 squares. These are 4 by 4 squares. I also cut out 4 heat bond ultra hold iron on adhesive pieces, which you see me putting on now. I'm going to put 1 on every square. Again, this is also going to be 4 by 4, and this is just to make them nice and stiff so they can remain in that pinwheel formation. It also doesn't say anything about being weather resistant, and I would only use these for decoration, but I have found that when you do use the Heat and Bond Ultra Hold, it does seem to withstand a little bit of water that I may or may not have accidentally spilled all over my fabric, but I definitely don't think it would withstand a rainstorm or anything. I also saw online that you could use Mod Podge for this instead, because I will say the Heat and Bond is a little bit pricier, but I personally haven't used the Mod Podge, so I can't really speak to that. But once you have ironed these on, wait for them to cool, and then you can peel off the backing. And once you have peeled off that backing, we're going to head back to the ironing board one last time. I wanted my pinwheels to have two different types of fabric. So when I take it back over to the ironing board, I am going to have the area where the adhesive part is. They are going to be touching, and I'm just covering this. This is just a piece of fabric, and this is purely just in case any of that adhesive, in case it were to leak out. I don't want it getting on my iron, so not a necessary step. And a lot of people have covers or some other sort of cloth that they don't really care about, but that's just to protect my iron from the adhesive. I'm then taking a pair of pinking shears and going around my two squares so that the edges of my pinwheels have a fun little pattern and aren't just plain. Next, I need to find center, so I am doing that by making an X across my little square, and then of course where the X's intersect is where my center is going to be. Then from my center, I am measuring out 1 inch and making little marks. This would be amazing if you had chalk. I could not find my chalk, so I had to use pencil. And once I had made those 1 inch marks from center, I went back in with my pinking shears, and I know that the mark that I made is where I need to stop the shears, so I don't want to go all the way to center. The next part is really easy, but be careful. That's why I have on these little finger protectors, and I am just popping a little bit of hot glue in the center, and then every other area I'm going to be pulling forward and hot gluing on top of one another, making, of course, the infamous pinwheel shape. And that's why I'm wearing the finger protectors, because you do have to hold it in place for a little bit of time just to make sure that everything dries correctly, and you do not want to be burning yourself. That would really hurt. For the center of your pinwheel, you can really pick whatever you would like. I had these little wood buttons that I thought were very cute and gave me the Americana vibe, so I went ahead and placed those at the center of the pinwheel. And then for the pinwheel to, actually become the pinwheel that you could either stake in the ground, put in a floral arrangement, or just use as decor, I am using a bamboo skewer stick. And these ones I picked up at the grocery store, and they kind of have this flathead area that was really great for hot gluing to the back. But if you're not able to use those, you can use regular skewers or some of the really cute red, white, and blue themed paper straws that the Dollar Tree has out right now. I also think would make a really good base for our patriotic pinwheel. If you are someone who has a bunch of scrap fabric or scrap ribbon laying around, then this DIY is definitely for you. Adding in the blue jean patch just gives it the complete vintage Americana vibes, and this one might look complicated, but it's actually really easy. I'm taking a wood dowel from the Dollar Tree, and I also have this jean pocket, but we're not going to add that yet. And then I had cut out just a bunch, mostly scrap fabric, although there are some ribbon pieces in there as well, of red and white in all sorts of different patterns and shades. And I had a bunch of those ready to go. And I was watching a TV show while I was doing this because it's pretty mindless. It's really fun, but you definitely don't have to completely pay attention. And I just started adding all the different ribbon and fabric scraps to the wood dowel. Now that I have enough of the scrap fabric and ribbon covering the area where the pocket is going to go, I am able to go ahead and add that. And similar to how I added the ribbon, I just created a fold at the top of our jean pocket and used some hot glue to place that over. And then I just kept doing what I was already doing, using the different scraps of the red and the white pattern fabric and ribbon, and just finishing that up so it started to look more like the USA flag. For the next part, I could have gone with just some plain white vinyl stars, but I really wanted this to have a bit more of a vintage feel, so I created a stencil out of some scrap vinyl that I had, and then I went in with a sponge paintbrush and some white paint and sponged over the stencil so that when I eventually removed the stencil, I had some nice white stars. I really like the very homemade look of the paint. You can kind of see some runs in it, and I just think it looks like something you would see in like a Levi or very kind of American denim brand high-end store. I also added a little bit of jute on the ends of the dowel so that I could hang it up. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, keep searching, keep creating.